I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Note that all council members are present except Councilmember Miller, who will not be joining us this evening.
Thank you. And that brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Are there any?
Move adoption.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And that brings us to oral communications number 1, where I have one slip, and that's from Jamie Dunn.
And thank you. And I thought that I was hoping to see John Swicky here because I thought he was talking directly to me when he wrote his letter about Airbnb, which is a misnomer. It doesn't really exist as such. There's no B for breakfast, and there's no air. So I don't understand it, but Mr. Swicky said that one of the goals was to preserve the present unique character of Brisbane. I thought that was me. I think I am. But I also want you to know that I have a real serious side. And the serious side is this. I'm skating on very thin ice. And when I get up in the morning, the first task is to be able to stand up. The second, to be able to put on my own shoes. Third, to make sure that all those who live with me are still living and doing okay. And then to figure out, how do I live through the day? How do I get through today? And I've known a lot of people in Brisbane over the years who have done the same thing and not gotten through that day because of the economic situations that they were in. And I know many today. And so I want to talk a little bit about why I like the concept of Airbnb, what I like about it. To survive, I've bought a loaf of bread from the grocery market bargain outlet, knowing that I could have toast in the morning, a peanut butter sandwich for lunch, and maybe for dinner, I could get an egg and make myself French toast. And to my chagrin, on occasion, my dogs have gotten to the bread first. And it's been a very daunting day when that happens. Financially, there are many of us in this community who are very, very reliant on whatever skills we can pull together in order to survive. And as time goes on, for different reasons, we find that our skills have lessened in terms of our physical ability. I can't clean houses anymore. And I don't sit other people's pets very often. And things of the sort. I have rented space in my house out of necessity. Don't usually like it. I like my privacy. If I'm up in the middle of the night, I don't want to have to tiptoe. I like to put on music, but I don't if someone else is in the house. And I find that the great thing about this Airbnb is that I can choose when and if somebody else will be in my home. how long they'll be there. And I know there's a big difference between having somebody there through Craigslist, Hip Housing, and Airbnb. The difference is being that with Airbnb, they're heavily vetted, and you can check their past. Craigslist, I've been burned a couple times. I got burned by Hip Housing. I've had people in my house that were into drugs, and they were scary. I've had passive-aggressive people that not only scared me, but they scared the neighbors. And I have found a relief in being able to use Airbnb, knowing that I'm going to have another knee replaced, and I can choose not to have someone in my house during my recuperation. Heavily vetted and recourse. I can call up the Airbnb company and say, what do we do about this? This is what's happening, or this looks like it's not a good idea. And I get support. And you don't get that from any other place. Now, there's money involved. There's money involved for me. There's money involved for the city, because if things go the way they've gone in Bend, Oregon, and other cities that have used Airbnb wisely, there's a tax that is paid, and there's a benefit. And I've been through this now for the 5th time, and I can say that we're absolutely certain that these people are much easier and better than the people that I've dealt with otherwise. And I really, I ask that each of you look carefully at how this is benefiting the people that you represent, how it is saving their homes, in some cases saving their lives. And it might not be what everybody likes right now, but I think that with the work that you can put into it, you can be. And if it goes down the road enough where study can be involved and everybody can have a viewpoint that helps put this in the right perspective, I think it's going to be helpful. And by the way, tenants do not use Brisbane businesses. Airbnb people do. They go to the market, they go to the restaurants and so forth. But a tenant does not. They go to work and they come back, they shop on the way. So there are a lot of benefits. I think they haven't been expressed enough. I'd really like to see further study. I'd like to see us work together, a committee of whomever. And I'm hoping that this will be something that you will consider and put together, in a real responsible way. We're going to save a lot of people a lot of trouble and a lot of sadness, quite frankly. And I think there's a benefit to the community.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it. And I'm hoping that, maybe if we go towards having some group discussion, that you'll feel free to call me, and I'd be willing to participate at any level. Thank you very much.
As a reminder, this is on our agenda as a council discussion later in the evening, and oral communications are for items that are not on the agenda. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing no hands, we will move on to the consent calendar.
I'd like to remove item A. D is in David, H is in house.
Okay. And any other removals? No. Lori?
No, there was just a minor edit I've made to item D, but it doesn't need to be removed. It was typographical.
And I would like to remove item E.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was item E that I was talking about.
Okay.
It's removed.
Okay, move approval of items B. City Council minutes of June 8th. Item C, City Council minutes of June 9th. Item F, Ordinance 596. Item G, Ordinance 597. Item I, Resolution 2015-35. And J, Second Amendment Agreement for Professional Service for Anchor QEA LLC.
And I'd like to abstain from item A as I was not present at that meeting.
Pardon me?
So do we want to do the others bracketed, not with item A, so that Lori can?
I said I was
say it.
abstaining
I
from.
said items B, C.
Was item A removed?
Yeah,
Item
I
A was
removed A.
removed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Do we have a
BC.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that will move us to item A, which is the city council minutes of June 4th.
And I think you should have that in front of you. And I just
do.
wanted to request an addition because what I said that night wasn't in the minutes at all. And I actually knew Paul longer than anybody and wish that to be put in there.
I think that's very nice to add.
So if my colleagues agree with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve city council minutes of June 4th.
Second.
Second?
Abstain.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention for Councilmember Lou. And then,
Item D. I just had a small correction that's outlined in blue. It's spelling of turbines. And Lori, you had some proposed stuff, which I'm okay with. Also on page 2 of the city council minutes of June 15th.
is everyone okay with the changes?
June 15th.
And then with that, do we have a motion to approve?
Correct.
Did you make that motion, Clark?
I'll make that motion. Motion to approve minutes of June 15th.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And on item D, on the 4th page, and in the second to last paragraph, I'd like to add that Mayor O'Connell stated that the housing element had been reviewed by both the Planning Commission and the Council 2 times and had been approved both times by a vote, and that she felt that the Council was making planning decisions under the guise of budgeting without consulting the Planning Commission and the public.
That's what you said that night.
That is what I said.
And I've noted that on page 2, under oral communications, there's just a typo for what Jennifer Bousquet said, that it says $7,500 instead of $7,500 had been raised.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Make a motion to approve.
thank you. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And on item H,
Item H, which is facility assessment services. I'm good with everything in there. I just had a couple small quibbles. I talked with Randy about this today, and this is a little bit historical significance on some of the buildings.
and I had some of the same questions, I think, when I looked at it. I just,
Okay, I'm going to go to page 3, and I guess I'm talking to you, Karen, or John. This is of the facilities location, description, function, maintenance requirement. So page 3, where it says library community center, that
you're talking about the scope of work, page 3?
Jack that one.
yeah,
All right.
Attachment C.
this is on attachment C. Attachment C, that it's towards the back. It says facilities, location, description, function, and maintenance requirement. So page 3 of that, of attachment C, under the heading of library community center, the description, it was built in 65. Actually, it was built in 1980 and 81. It was dedicated in 81 when it was completed. I think it was April 1981.
Okay.
And these are just small quibbles, really, but kind of has some historical significance,
Sure.
especially the next one, which is on page 7. It This is the Kids and Things located at 4 Solano. Used to be the old recreation center back in the 60s and 70s. That was actually built in 1945, 1946.
Wow.
Okay, and it was located on the corner of Visitation and Old County Road when Visitation ran straight through out to Bayshore Boulevard. It was right across the street from the old motel. And it actually served as the first library in town also.
Oh.
So I think, I talked to Dolores Gomez about that today, and, our local historian, and, and Dolores told me that Bernice Delbon, who was the first librarian here in Brisbane, said she used to have to contend with ping pong balls coming into the library portion. Oh. That was before they moved there to by the hardware store. So that was actually dedicated in October of 1946, and then it was moved
Moved.
in 1958 to its current location. And you know where it went? Went up Mariposa Street. That's how it was moved. Can you believe that? I think they used a wagon or something.
Oh.
But you can tell Randy from an engineering feat
Yeah.
move that building.
Sad to miss that.
And it's still standing today. It's probably made out of redwood. Got redwood studs or something.
So I'm going to assume we don't have as-built for that one?
Huh?
I'm going to assume we don't have as-built for that one?
I don't know. I mean, you can check with the county of San Mateo. But, it's just one of those things. It did serve as a recreation center, too, so for all those years.
Huh.
And 1958, that's when Lippman School opened also, so all that site there. That was before Crocker Park, and then Crocker started to build, I think, that first building, which is right across here, was probably the first one. Would have been behind where this location was, because this is right on the corner of Visitation in Old County, right before it took how it takes the U-turn now.
Right, so
You
now
run it straight out.
we have the sewer lift station, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it's good just from a historical standpoint. So I did get that information from Dolores on when it actually was built. So probably 1945, 1946, it being probably completed in 46 because it was dedicated in October of 46. So,
Okay.
and that's it. That's really all I have on that one.
I actually had some things as well. So I had asked about what Kids and Things was because that was predating my time here, and that's now what Silver Spot is. There used to be a Park and Rec preschool there.
Right.
So it's going to be updated to show that that's the Silver Spot property and that it's occupied, not unoccupied.
Right. Yeah, I noted the vacant on it also.
Yeah. And I had asked staff about the property at the teen center and the garage adjacent to that, why it was included in here if
Yeah, that's my.
we're planning on
I
not continuing to use it. And
Well, I think in part we don't know that yet. We haven't made a decision on it, but I think we'll probably, my guess is that we'll probably hold off on doing any assessment of that building, and Karen actually told me that could probably deduct about $3,000 from the study.
okay.
But, that's an issue and a discussion we're going to have here in the fairly near future in terms of what we're doing with that site, that building.
I thought that when we've discussed that site before, most everyone had agreed, or it was of the opinion that it was basically a tear-down site, and whatever we ended up doing with it would be some sort of change of structure. And I have a difficulty paying for a inspection on something
Right.
that we're assuming is a tear-down, and if that needs to be
I mean,
determined.
you could repair it if you
Yeah.
wanted to. I mean, I think it's one of those things where is it worth the dollars to do
Right.
it, and then what's the use? So I
And
would.
you sent out in your staff report that there was a local contractor who was interested in fixing the building up.
He has stated an interest in that. Again, I guess that's a potential thing that we will need to take a look at.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to necessarily characterize it as a tear down, but Randy did take a look at it, and the cost to our cost estimates to fix it were probably $40,000-$50,000, and that's just the roof and, just the basics. That doesn't, count anything you might actually want to do inside the building.
Okay.
And then there's the whole question of what do we want to do with the site. So, but I think for now we'll probably just hold off on any keeping it or putting it as part of this inventory, and we'll deduct that from the cost.
Okay, so then I'd like to request that we explicitly state, because it says there's a lump sum, and it does have a breakdown in the attachment, but if we could put in there that if there are any adjustments made, that, that it would be deducted, so we
Sure.
just have that in writing.
Okay.
Did you have any comments on this?
No, I had the same question. So both the
Okay.
teen center and the garage will be.
And then I also wanted to add that the Public Works sign yard, which is a trailer, for $1,500 to inspect. I'm just sort of surprised we'd be inspecting a trailer.
I mean, it's a shed, I think, technically, right?
I thought that I will go back and look, but I thought it was described as a trailer.
Public Works Corporation yard trailer.
Yes, it just seems.
It's at the far northwest corner, and it's not a movable unit. So, and we can clarify that, but it's a facility that I think at this time we're mainly using for storage. But
I'm sorry.
We're mainly using for storage, but it does have use to us, so I guess we could clarify that. And
I think it's probably, Terry, the more correct term would be mobile, but a trailer, I mean, it's made out of wood studs, got wood siding, asphalt shingle roof, so it's a kind of a permanent fix, but it could be moved, right?
right.
So it'd be more of a mobile versus a trailer. Or a trailer you hook up on the back of your car.
Correct.
And then I just wondered if we could get a reasoning why some things to inspect are $4 a square foot and some are 33 cents.
Well, I think they wanted to have a minimum cost for each site. There's a minimum just to show up and do a complete inspection, and then some of them that are bigger, the cost per square foot then went down. So, I mean, it might have probably been more useful not even to have that cost per square foot, because it does move all over the place, and I believe they assessed each site at what they thought the cost would be to assess it.
And for this whole overall thing, we did budget 50,000 for, right? So it's well within range.
That's correct, yes.
But it doesn't mean we need to spend it all.
Oh, I'm not saying we didn't.
So there are some possibilities of excluding some of the projects from this.
Yes.
And with that caveat, are we okay to, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Your stuff passed, by the way. Your stuff passed. We approved it. Item I. About 10 minutes ago.
But I thought you wanted to have audience participation.
You're welcome to stand.
You signed it.
We assumed you weren't objecting. And that brings us through the end of the consent calendar and to the public hearing. I have to apologize, my papers are out of order, and this is to consider adoption of Resolution GVMID 2015-01, adopting the annual budget for the fiscal year 2015-2016, and making appropriations for the amount budgeted. This was an error that we did not read it out in the last budget hearings, and so this is a time to correct that. And so it is a public hearing. And do we have any questions for a staff, or do you want to have a staff report?
This was just, there were no changes to the GVMID budget brought forth at the final meeting. It had been looked at by finance, or by the subcommittee and the staff and the council for the 4 prior study sessions, so it's the basic GVMID budget that we have every year. Are there any questions?
I have no questions for staff.
No.
But this is a public hearing, so I'll open it up for public comment on Resolution GVMID 201501. And seeing no requests to speak,
Motion to close public hearing?
a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve resolution number GVMID 2015-01.
And a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then we come to item B, public hearing on the Sierra Point Lighting and Landscaping District. Staff report, please.
Sure, this is an annual process that we do in order to assess the property owners at Sierra Point to maintain the lighting and landscaping improvements that were made out there. The charges have not increased this year from last year. We did hold a Prop 218 vote a few years ago that allowed us to increase fees at a 10% rate until we caught up with overcharges in the past. And we still are providing a little bit of catch-up, but we expect the expenses to be around $50,000 under the revenue, so we didn't need to raise fees. We expect to save a little bit of money with water. Actually, the utility line item that pays to irrigate the landscaping out there, but we're still going to try to do some supplemental measures to preserve what we have. You can do additional mulching. We're doing the deep root watering. You can aerate the turf, so we didn't want to go backwards on fees. And now that's my report, and then there's a process that happens for the public hearing. There's a statement for the mayor to read and the clerk. And if anyone has any questions.
I'm sorry, I just have a hard time hearing you sometimes, so thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for staff?
No, but can you turn our microphone up more, Sherry, please?
Is this better?
A little bit.
If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Now
There
we
you go.
can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you. I have no questions for staff. Although I will ask on the watering and the landscaping, is this for the central landscaping and the individual buildings pay for their own water and landscaping?
That's correct. So we maintain the pathways that are adjacent to the roadways, and then the green belt on either side of those, and the medians in the roadways. So the shoreline pathways and the pathways along Sierra Point Parkway and Marina Boulevard. And then the green belt is what we call it on either side. So basically what supports that pathway. But beyond that, on the private property, that's the property owners maintain that.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like
I
to
think,
speak?
Madam Mayor, I think you have to have the engineer read a statement before you open up the public hearing.
Oh,
and then you
okay.
do the mayor's statement, and it's a whole process, right?
Okay. So you'd like me to read that now?
Actually, I think the city engineer does theirs first, don't they?
I don't think I have any other statement than the staff report.
Huh? Oh, she did, okay.
Okay. So the opening statements by the mayor of the city of Brisbane, July 16th, 2015, Sierra Point Landscaping and Lighting District. This is the time and place set for hearing on the engineer's report and the levy and collection of the proposed assessment for fiscal year 2015-2016 for the Sierra Point Landscaping and Lighting District. These proceedings were undertaken pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. The engineer's report prepared by the engineer of work consists of the proposed improvements, the boundaries of the assessment district, and any zones therein, the proposed diagram, the estimate of cost thereof, and the proposed assessments upon assessable lots and parcels within the district. Any one of these items may be the subject of protests or endorsements. You are asked to clearly identify yourself and the property owned by you so that your statements may be correctly recorded. And the hearing is declared open, and I will ask the city clerk to report on the various notices given in connection to the hearing.
Notices have been mailed and posted as required by the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972. Proofs of mailing and posting are on file in my office. A copy of the engineer's report prepared by the engineer of work was filed in my office on June 8th, 2015, and has been open to public inspection since that time.
Thank you. So are there any members of the public who would like to speak?
Motion to close public hearing.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And then by motion adoption of Resolution 201532, overruling protests and ordering the improvements and confirming the diagram and assessment for fiscal year 2015-2016 for the Sierra Point Landscaping and Lighting District.
Second.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve resolution number 2015-32.
And we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And thank you for your help on that.
Yeah.
It's good to have a little experience. And that brings us to item C, the City of Brisbane Local Stormwater Program Fees.
For some reason, we don't have the same process or the same statements to read for the public hearing, but with the NPDS fees, each year you need to adopt the resolution that allows us to impose the fees. The fees charged per parcel have not changed. The report reflects that a couple of parcels have either combined or split or changed ownership or had development occur on them. So the amount collected is changed from $53,600 to $53,800 or some small amount such as that. And without going into a lot of detail, we do discuss in the staff report that these fees don't cover all of the expenses for MPDES, but it's been discussed and we're waiting to see what the county does in terms of imposing additional fees before actually tackling that issue at greater length.
And if we could, I know we use these acronyms, Madam Mayor, but since this is on people's tax rolls, NEPT stands for
National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, and it is to prevent pollution in the stormwater, and it involves street sweeping, trash capture, and various other inspections of construction sites and industrial sites.
Any questions for staff? And nope. This is a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing and take public comment. Are there any members of the public here who would like to speak? Seeing no hands.
motion to close public hearing.
Thank you. And a
Second.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we need to consider adoption of resolution 2015-33.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then we have new business, item A, to provide comments regarding proposed letter drafted for mayor's signature regarding reissuance of municipal regional permit. Staff report.
I'm not extensively knowledgeable about this item, but I have discussed it with the Public Works Director, and he's let me know that he has discussed this with the mayor. The city is commenting on the proposed municipal regional permit 2.0 and has a number of concerns with regards to how they intend to require management of PCBs particularly, and green infrastructure development, and they've written comments and made comments to the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff, but they'd like the council to direct some comments and concerns directly to the board, and that's the substance of this item. The letter that we're proposing that you sign is attached, and I can try to answer questions you might have.
Questions for the staff?
No, I know. I know the Regional Water Quality Board has really been knuckling down on communities as far as what's being discharged into the sewage system, and you see that that's one of the things that are impacting our garbage rates now, is because of overfilling trash bins or commercial trash bins, things of that nature. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of debris that blows around. That's one of the programs, I guess, that we have on cleaning Bayshore Boulevard now, and also Lagoon Way. That's all part of that's being driven by Regional Water Quality Control Board, right? And
Correct.
so there's a lot of things that they're requesting, and I think this is letters in response to some of the things that may be not quite reasonable, or they're asking a little bit too much, and we're pushing back a little bit that maybe you should look at it this way instead of being draconian, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good summary, I would say. They are asking us, with the PCBs, asking us to be able to quantify how many PCBs we're finding without knowing what result they're looking for, and asking us to reduce and develop our own program without using kind of a higher level, and we're asking them to go in the other direction and get the state or the federal government to put a program together, such as what was done with asbestos and with lead, instead of having every agency have their own program to manage and quantify what's happening.
Have a standard.
Exactly.
I do. So, Karen, so are there other cities that are also writing letters to the board?
It didn't appear from, I haven't discussed that with the Public Works Director, but there's a letter coming from the CCAG, the county program, and I believe that the Public Works Director has been pretty involved with the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
So the CCAG letter is going to be pretty much in the same theme as what our letter.
Yes.
Okay.
But a number of cities will be doing the same thing we're doing, and having their councils approve it and their mayor sign it. We're trying to ratchet up the on the board, because the staff's been dealing with it, CCAG's been dealing with it, and I think now where the feeling is that we need to get the political leadership to make statements and to try to get them to kind of reevaluate what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Trying to identify PCB, out and about, without, having the expertise to really address it. I mean, it just doesn't
I think
make sense.
The worst case scenario for I think the cities, ours being one of them, is that we could potentially get fined for something that there's no proven way to remove, and that is an untenable position. Hopefully it would never come to that, but the regional board has a way of just kind of creating expectations without any real thought in terms of how we're going to make that happen. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do that is because they rely upon our resources to ultimately figure it out. It's just like the trash collection plan. I mean, that give a lot of credit to Randy. He put together a really pretty extensive and innovative trash collection plan that I think other cities are starting to look at in the county. And, so that's what happens on a local level, but to kind of be held accountable for something when we don't really have the necessarily the technology or the understanding of how to deal with, seems a little bit scary and a little bit draconian, and we just at least want to be on record that we disagree with this up front.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the letter's spot on, and
Well, I won't take credit for the letter. It really was staff directed, and I did speak with both Randy Barrow and Clay Holstein about this. I think the city attorney had some comments on the being able to go back and change some of the conditions of approval on existing development agreements, and that's one of the comments I'd like him to make a little further discussion of.
Sure. One of the requirements, or one of the requirements that this new order would do would be to impose on projects that have already been approved certain mitigation measures, and we feel that from a land use and a regulatory standpoint, we are not going to be able to impose those kinds of regulatory conditions on already approved projects. So it puts us in a bit of a bind when the regional board is expecting us to now require this and enforce it when we don't have the regulatory authority to do so. So part of the letter addresses that fact and indicates that it puts us in a catch-22 situation, and therefore, to the extent that a project has already been approved, these new regulations ought not be imposed on such projects. So at least we're trying to get that out on the table. The staff has made that pitch to the regional board, but as the city manager indicated, we're kind of ratcheting up now by having the elected officials weigh in to try to get those kinds of requirements removed.
now this board is made up of elected officials, right? Because I'm familiar with two of the people on the list, so.
The other is that we would have major problems trying to map and meet the requirements of any trash generation on an area over 5,000 square feet, which is almost the size of our average lot here in town. So with that, do I have a motion to direct the
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
letter to be sent? Okay,
Second?
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I guess I should have opened it for public hearing, but if there were members of the public who would like to speak on it, we would certainly still listen to them. Okay, so that brings us to item B, consider resolution of adoption 2015-34, a resolution of intention to initiate an amendment to the zoning ordinance of the City of Brisbane to require massage establishments intending to locate in commercial zoning district to obtain a conditional use permit. Staff report, please.
Yes. Last year, Council adopted comprehensive new operational regulations concerning massage establishments, and that's codified in Chapter 8.10 of the Municipal Code. The regulations, however, were not land use driven. They were more operational in nature because at that time the thinking was that state law preempted most of the land use regulations concerning massage establishments. That law was changed, however, during the 2014 legislation session, went into effect in January of 2015, and under that statute, AB 1147, cities may now impose land use regulations such as conditional use permits on massage establishments that are different than can be imposed on other professional or personal services. Under the city's current zoning ordinance, massage establishments are permitted uses as a personal service in a number of commercial zoning districts, including Crocker Park, Sierra Point, and the neighborhood commercial districts. They are conditionally allowed in other zoning districts. The concern that staff had is that in some communities, the massage establishments have been opened as a cover for illegal activities, And as a consequence, the thought was that before such establishments open up in this community, there ought to be at least some land use procedure involving a conditional use permit before these type of operations are allowed to open. Accordingly, in order to accomplish that and to require conditional use permits in all commercial zoning districts, the zoning ordinance would need to be amended to accomplish that. So we are recommending that the council adopt this resolution of intention that would refer the matter to the Planning Commission for report and recommendation to the council as to whether or not such a conditional use permit ought to be imposed for these type of businesses. These changes don't change the operational requirements for massage establishments, but I have had some discussion with Councilmember Liu, and she has suggested that when this matter is returned to the council on the land use issue, there are a couple of operational requirements that the new law also contemplated, and we would bring those forward for the council to consider at that time as well. Any questions about this? I'd be glad to answer them.
I have none.
I can elaborate on my comment. So what I was talking about was that there's SB 1193, the Senate bill, which requires the posting of a 1-800 number for trafficking victims to be posted at massage establishments and other locations. And it's been suggested to me that that we require that within our massage ordinance, that it specifically state that that posting of information would be required, and for massage establishments that are subject to the ordinance. So while we're making the zoning regulation changes, Michael said that he could make that change as well. And I did have two questions as well. So how does this affect existing massage establishments? You know, there's one in town, the Green Spa. So would they have to get a conditional use permit?
No, they would not. They would, if an existing use would not be subject to it. However, if the use moved or if it expanded or changed certain aspects of it, then and the new regulations were in effect, then those requirements would apply.
Okay. And then my other question I had asked staff was, so this zoning regulation talks about Crocker Park and also the Brisbane Village, and you know, as we'll be doing the specific plan for the Brisbane Village, my question is, well, what would happen if the zoning changed in that area? Would the conditional use permit requirement still apply for a new zoning district or to an area that's been rezoned?
And I spoke with the planning director about this, and we anticipate that the precise plan will probably be an overlay zoning district and therefore would not affect the underlying zoning district, which would still require a conditional use permit. But to the extent that it supersedes the existing zoning, these kinds of regulations would go along with it, so a conditional use permit would still be applicable, assuming that the council adopts it for that particular area.
Thank you.
And the resolution of intention, the purpose of that is what?
The purpose of that is to initiate the change so that there is a process so that the matter just doesn't sort of spring out of the ground. The council has looked at this matter, has determined that it would like the Planning Commission to review the matter and make a report and recommendation to the council. If the council's not interested in pursuing that, then the council would not adopt this resolution of intention and the matter would remain as status quo.
Any comments?
I just have just a question for Chief Macias. So in the bottom paragraph on the first page, it says the police department is of the view that massage establishments should be conditionally permitted uses in all commercial zoning districts. So it sounds like you're very much in favor of moving in that direction.
Yes, Councilmember Lentz, can you hear me? No? Can you hear me now? A little bit. Is that better?
That's the mic that's not working.
Oh, okay. Let me switch over.
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs.
Oh, thank you.
No.
No. Oh, no. How's that? Is that better? Yes.
There you go. It is.
So the question was is if the police department is in support of this, and that's yes. As we see this growing problem within our big neighboring cities around us in the county, the pattern is that a lot of these that are storefronts for prostitution, even human trafficking, are being, once they're recognized, they're being shut down. And some of the pattern that we're seeing within the county is that they're moving very quickly to the next adjoining city. And many of these cities, San Francisco and South City, I believe, have already adopted this ordinance, this change for use permits. So right now we are kind of in a vulnerable stage because they can come in and an establishment can get a business license and then pretty much open business. So I think it's in our best interest to, yes, go along and support this so that there is a process that they would need to go through. If it is a legitimate business, we of course are supportive of like our green spa in the village. But we also want to have a process that would protect the city and the community from any of these illegitimate businesses coming into our community.
All right, so if we didn't make these changes to the ordinance, and then they did establish themselves, then they would be grandfathered in without having the conditional uses.
Yes, that they, let's say an establishment would come in that as a permitted use, there's still the regulatory aspects of the massage establishment that would allow the city to abate establishments that are truly not massage. The idea of the conditional use permit is that it sort of gives a first chance to look at the operation, make sure that it's compatible with the surrounding uses. It's just kind of one more safeguard. It doesn't guarantee that you wouldn't have an illicit operation, but we think it would be some additional protection for the city.
So then if someone wanted to establish a massage establishment, they would have to go before the planning commission, get the permit, and if it was approved by the planning commission, then they could do their, they could have their operation. Whereas right now, they just get a business license and they start doing their business.
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
And with a conditional, it can be revoked if something's violated. What's the process on that?
That is correct. I mean, there are also suspension and revocation procedures under the massage establishment regulatory procedures, but there's also the land use aspect as well. So we sort of have a double-barreled approach, as it were, if you have an illicit operation.
Thank you. Any members of the public who would like to speak on this? Seeing no members of the public,
Motion to approve resolution number 2015-34.
I would like to make a comment first.
Okay.
As someone who likes going to massage establishments for legitimate massage, I do worry that we're painting all massage establishments with the same brush, and that we're insinuating that they are all trafficking and doing the wrong thing, and so it worries me that we're looking at some of the bad apples and trying to put everyone in that same group as not being appropriate businesses and not wanting them in our town. So
I have to disagree with you on that, Terry, because I don't think we're doing that to all businesses. I think what we're doing is protecting the city.
Oh, I understand that.
And you know, it's not saying that they're bad. I mean, certainly there's you know, hopefully the majority are ethical massage. You know, I mean. You know,
Hopefully,
that,
yes,
you know,
and hopefully that we
quite
can.
a few places in the Bay Area that you know that teach these courses. You know, 1,000-hour courses, and they're very holistic. So you know, I think it's to protect us from when we do have situations.
Well, I understand.
That's the whole purpose, is not, it's not saying everybody's a bad apple, just.
I understand. It just, I think we've gone a bit aggressive before the state ordinance came out. We did our ordinance, and now we're playing sort of catch up with it. But I'm happy to approve this and to go along with this. It's just that, I don't think that they're all sex traffickers and prostitution rings. And I sort of would make me feel uncomfortable walking into a place that I know is legitimate massage establishment and having to see a sign saying, call this number if you're in trouble. I think that can be an unfair burden. So,
Well, that's already required by the state. It's just writing that into our ordinance as well. So,
I'll second.
so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
So we have the staff report, city manager's report on upcoming activities.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's one item that I did want to just highlight tonight to the council, and I had a suggestion on it. You may have been following some information that's coming out from the League of California Cities with regards to AB 113. It is a so-called redevelopment dissolution bill, cleanup, and a trailer bill, and it could have potentially significant impacts on us. I've been working with Assemblyman Mullen's office for a couple months, providing them information on this, and I think he's pretty receptive to our concern, and I think there's other cities in his district that are also voicing concerns, not the least of which would be South San Francisco. But what I would think might be a good idea is that, as you probably know, on Monday the legislature kind of kicked the ball down the field a little bit and decided that they weren't going to deal with this right now, that they'll deal with it later on in the summer. At least that's the plan for now. So I think it'd really be good for us to get a very strongly worded letter that what I would suggest is that each of you sign to show kind of a real political statement on part of the city council that we're very concerned about this, and we probably don't have time to get Councilmember Miller's, but we could get the rest of the council's signature on a letter and send it off to both Assemblyman Mullen as well as our state
Senator Hill,
Jerry Hill, and probably also to the chairs of the committees that are working on this bill.
Good idea. Is that the one that includes the 56 items that are?
No, that's actually a different one.
Right?
This one would take the loans that the city had made going back and these are loans that have gone back many, many years at this point, but have been approved on our ROPS by our local successor agency, and are actually on our Department of Finance list, and that would put them at risk. There's also a whole issue that a lot of cities are having with regards to various lawsuits that are going on. That doesn't really impact us, but we could potentially lose, the two loans, which I think are a total of about $4 million. It's not all general fund dollars, but it's $4 million of city funds that could potentially be wiped out.
Some of our paper money.
Hits keep on coming, huh?
It's money that that will get repaid at some point as long as it's on the ROPS, and that's the issue right now. Is the state wants to go and wipe it off of the receivables to the city.
Of course they do, because they know they screwed up, and it didn't do what they want, and so now they're looking for another way to try and fix it and screw the cities more. I get what they're doing.
Who's leading that charge, Clay?
Oh, this is definitely the governor.
That's the guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And the stick that they're holding over everyone is that they'll get serious about, the government will get serious about, some sort of economic development tools, whether it's redevelopment 2.0 or whatever it might be, once all these issues really dealing with the dissolution, the past redevelopment agencies are taken care of. And so this is his way of doing that.
It just shows you
Trust
how
me,
asleep.
and then I'll help you guys out.
Something to that.
Then we'll do it all over again.
Yeah, it just shows you how asleep our voters really are
Well,
by
I think
reelecting that guy.
I think it would be good if we got a staff report on the actual bill.
Yeah, I will forward to you. I can forward to you tomorrow the information that I sent to Assemblyman Mullen's office, and it explains not only what loans, but the background and the history of them and the rationale for them, and then I think that's what we can incorporate into a letter, so that we have not only what we're requesting, but also the rationale for why we did these loans going back in time. Which in our case, they're both meritorious. I mean, one of them was for affordable housing, and the other one was actually to help pay down a redevelopment loan so that we basically saved ourselves and all the underlying taxing entities lots and lots of money. I wouldn't want to say millions of dollars. It might have been millions of dollars on a loan package that was put together back in the 1980s. And we refinanced that, and we borrowed money from the Marina Fund to do that. And now they want to come in and say, thanks, but, we're going to take that money too. It just doesn't seem fair.
Is there a timeline that they think AB 113 is going to be coming forward?
Right now, what we're hearing from the league is that they'll be dealing with it in August. But they've been kicking this down the road for since probably April, May of this year, and maybe even before that. But there's a lot of opposition. The members of the Assembly and the Senate are getting a lot of feedback from the cities in their district, a lot of pushback on this, and that's why it was postponed the other day.
So is this something that we would need an agreement from the council now, or it would be an individual signature and we don't need an agreement from the council?
It's just a letter. We send letters on various bills, and staff will draft them, and sometimes the mayor will sign them. Sometimes I will sign it, depending on what kind of bill it is. And in this case, I'm just suggesting that you all sign it. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll look for that in our boxes. And we're expecting to do that before our next meeting.
Oh yeah, I'll try to get this out next week sometime.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I got.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then under the mayor council matters, we had the consideration of planning commission recommendation regarding short-term residential rentals. And I don't think we're really doing a staff report at this time, but if you'd like to give us a staff report, we don't really have anything to vote on. It's just for discussion.
Correct. I defer to the council. I can go through it pretty quickly, or if you want to jump into a discussion, I defer to the mayor and council.
I do have a question. Why is it under mayor council matters and not, how come it's just not before us as a regular item on the agenda?
I can sort of answer that. It was my decision to put it under mayor and council matters. The planning commission had looked at the item and found that most of the comments were very mixed on whether people in the community wanted Airbnb or they didn't.
Is your microphone on, Terry?
Yes.
Oh.
Or if they did or didn't want Airbnb, and it was the Planning Commission's recommendation to leave it the way it is with our current regulations. But if it was the council's pleasure, we could put it to a vote. And to do that, we would need to make that determination very quickly if we wanted to put it to a vote on this upcoming election. And so this meeting was not to talk about or this discussion was not to discuss the merits of Airbnb, but whether we wanted to put it to spend the money to try to put something on the ballot to find out the will of the people. And my theory was that we would need to do that right away if we wanted to put it on the upcoming ballot. And that I thought that we could just discuss it without discussing the merits as far as if we all felt that it should go on a ballot, an official ballot.
No.
Yeah, I think it should come before the council and we should talk about it. And
Correct. I agree.
It's just not enough information yet, and I'm not ready to put it on a ballot.
I
Right.
think it's also very costly.
It is
And
very.
there's other ways that we could probably go about it.
So this was more to address the planning commission saying, throwing it back to us for the immediate, do we need to act very quickly to put it on a ballot immediately? And my theory was, and my thoughts were that bigger cities than us are still struggling to figure out how to cope with this kind of economy and these kind of rentals, and that we weren't quite ready to go there. So I just wanted to get everyone's idea, which was why I was sort of surprised we were doing it as an agenda report when it was a council matter.
Okay, as far as putting on the ballot, no, I don't agree.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think
we're ready for that.
the survey was only filled out by 188 people, and it wasn't even mailed to every house. It was just put, referenced in the Star and available at the library and on the city website. So I think we still need to do more outreach.
I agree.
And, the fact that it was 50-50 shows that, there's views on both sides. But I don't think that it's 50% opposed shows that we shouldn't consider it. I think we should move forward with considering if we want to change the regulation.
How we want to deal with
And
it.
I think that we should continue to have the code enforcement in abeyance.
Isn't this question going to be on the survey that we're going to be doing on the Baylands?
I don't know. I'm not on that subcommittee.
No. I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a question on there.
yeah, it was kind
I
of a
questioned the
generic
question.
question, just about the.
Yeah, it was just kind of thrown in there, and then, but I mean, that's another piece of data that, we may collect more input, even though it's not as detailed, but, yeah, we've all reviewed that, so.
Yeah, but that's only a yes/no, one single
That's a
question.
yes or no, and I mean,
Right.
that's we'll probably give a wider swath. And here it was yes, no, right? The no was no, and then the reasons no.
Right.
The yes were yes, and then maybe the reasons yes. In this case, you're going to get a yes, no. And, my question was, maybe a lot of people don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? And they said, oh, they just leave it blank. or they go research it.
Well, I think what we did with the Economic Development Forum was pretty successful and got a lot of community outreach. And so I would suggest doing something along those lines to use social media and also, perhaps put something in the mail. If it's already included in the Bayland survey, that's fine. But I think we need more of not a yes/no question, but more of a conversation. And
I think there needs to be more of a dialogue, and that, there's a lot of good, bad, and ugly when it comes to all the underground economy and the sharing economy that we have. So I think it really needs to be certainly vetted more in the community before we.
Well, I mean, this question is on the survey. I think everybody went through it, and
I don't think we're
from what I
supposed to talk
understand,
about the
that hasn't
survey.
been- huh?
I don't think we're supposed to talk about the survey.
Whether we are or not, I mean, it's on there, right?
I don't know what's going to make the final cut. I don't think we're supposed to be discussing the survey.
well, it was in the staff report.
Yeah, that's probably better. I agree with the mayor. Probably best that we don't.
Yeah, right. Well, it's on there. Okay. That's all I can say, is what the proposal was. I question it. So anyway, I think that it does require more vetting as far as, which way to go. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I know people that are for it, like Jamie. I know some that are definitely against it, So, I mean, it's how we're going to deal with it. And I see some of the stuff I read, some of the stuff that San Francisco is going through right now, and how are you going to regulate it?
A lot of tough issues. A lot of tough.
Yeah, I mean these are a lot of questions on how do you regulate it now? I mean it's done through what, John? You want to?
Since it's not a permitted use, it comes up through on a complaint-based enforcement. Someone has to file a complaint to the city about the land use. That's the only enforcement that comes up now.
Right. And how does one know? You know what I mean? As far as differentiating between friends that are staying over for a weekend versus a rental, how do you know that? I mean, it's just, I mean, the way it's set up, people just could be nasty to each other, and we've seen that. I've seen that here in town, where people have just been horrible to neighbors, and it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, you don't want to see, but they use the city as a hammer, and it sucks up staff time, and it may be founded, or most of the time I find it's unfounded. So, I just think we need more data as far as where we can kind of make any kind of decision on whether to or whether not to, or which direction to go on it, and I don't really, I can't really give any, I'd say, usable input to say, yeah, look at this, look at that. I mean, it just is going to require some collection of data that we
a lot
study,
of data,
and what some of the other cities are doing, and what's going on, and I mean, we have some letters here, very well written letters. Jamie mentioned Bend, Oregon. I know that was mentioned in one of the letters. That why are they successful? What size of community is it? What's the pros and cons of that? Where it is working in smaller communities. It seems like the larger communities are really struggling with it. So maybe it is more manageable in a smaller community. I don't know what makes it successful there, or what's like I said, what's the pros and cons. So, yeah.
Well,
can I ask a question of the staff?
of course.
So, John, since you've been dealing with this with the Planning Commission, have you found models in the country where cities have created the proper regulations so that cities are collecting the transit occupancy tax? There are guidelines for that maybe there's certain restrictions on how many units can be rented out by or done through the Airbnb system. If like it's the person owns a house or they own a couple of houses. I mean, there's got to be this isn't something that's new. Relatively speaking, I mean it's been going on for a few years now. So I'm sure some cities have been working at it and trying to come up with a good way to regulate.
Yeah, the research we did in support of the Planning Commission's hearings was limited to California, so we kind of did limit our scope. We found at that point about 6 or 7 cities that had regulations on the books, and there was quite a bit of variation in terms of, was it limited to an owner occupied? Did it have a certain number of days? Did they collect the fee as a TOT, or did they collect it as a business license? So it's once a year payable, as opposed to someone doing a month by month or occupancy based sort of revenue collection. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. I mean, I'd say the field, the regulations, there are a lot of cities that are in Brisbane's position where they occur, but the city's regulations really aren't there yet. And, so there aren't really, I can think of probably 10 off the top of my head that we researched that really are fairly detailed and robust, but a lot of people in the same position, they're trying to work their way through it in terms of what is the regulatory scheme. Do they want to sort of facilitate it? Do they want to encourage it, or do they want to, deal with it in a much more reactive kind of mode? But we definitely want to look at Bend. We didn't look at Bend in the last round of research.
Okay. And then one of the options that you've laid out under discussions, the last paragraph, says, alternatively, the City Council could direct staff and the Planning Commission to initiate a zoning code amendment accommodating short-term rentals in residential zones in some manner and provide whatever guidance is deemed appropriate. So basically, this is what I'm interpreting from this paragraph or from that sentence, is that if the council gave direction to staff and the Planning Commission, so, okay, we are interested in having this be in our community, and we want you to look at other examples and kind of come up with some kind of regulation that you feel is appropriate for our community, and then that would come back to the council. Is that what I'm getting at from this?
That's correct, because again, the conversations with the Planning Commission, this very broad discussion and pros and cons and how the community felt and some of the issues, but since the commission wasn't inclined to move forward with recommendations, we never really got into the nitty-gritty of what would a regulatory scheme be. Would it be a home occupation-based thing? Would it be a discretionary permit-based? Would it be performance standard-based? Since they weren't inclined to go down that path, we didn't do spend a lot of time working up a draft regulation.
Okay, so do you feel that they were looking for guidance from the council, or do you feel like the Planning Commission just didn't want to deal with it? I mean,
well, I think their reasoning is in their letter. I mean, certainly they didn't feel there was a overwhelming community desire to change the regulations. So, if they had a default, I don't want to speak for them, but if kind of 50-50, their default was maybe not to make the change, but that's, I think, why they wanted to go a little deeper, getting beyond the 188 survey responses, which for a planning item, I would point out, is really a very high level of response.
Absolutely.
So I don't know how many you got with your economic development workshop in terms of
50.
the sheer number of participants. Yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of effort put into trying to engage the community. And in some of those workshops, we had, 15 or 20 people actually actively participating in a planning commission workshop. So I do want to, make the point we did try to engage the community and have a dialogue with the commission at that stage. But, certainly there's always the opportunity to do better and get deeper. But, that was part of their conversation as well.
Okay.
Guess in Clay's words, kick the can down the road.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's something that we shouldn't try to rush into regulating until we know how it impacts everyone. So,
how do you do that unless you have a discussion?
Well, you're going to have a discussion.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
so
we're not going to have a discussion.
Yeah. So then, what is the next step for us? Where's the direction? And I like staff's recommendation that we provide guidance to the Planning Commission and staff to look at some type of regulatory model for allowing such uses in our community.
If we want to allow it, yes. And I think that we need to make that decision.
I think that's where we are. I'm in favor of doing that.
Okay.
And so I hope that my council colleagues are also in favor of doing that. I think we have a lot of people in our community who think that it's a good thing. I think Jamie gave just a very heartfelt rationale for why it is important for her and for many members in our community. I was just on vacation and I used Airbnb when I was on vacation. It was I liked it. And in many ways it was better because I was giving money to someone who lived in a community rather than giving a credit card to some corporation that I don't even know. And so to me, it keeps the money local, and that money then is spent in the local community. It helps homeowners And I agree that folks that would use Airbnb and stay in town would spend money in our town too. I think we have a really cute village, and why we don't have a bed and breakfast in our town just seems really bizarre to me, because our town is a lot like many towns that I like to visit, and I like to stay in a B&B because it's more quaint, and I feel like I'm contributing to this place that I am visiting rather than the money going somewhere else. So I would really like us to move forward with it instead of kicking the can down the road and, okay, we need all this research. No, I don't think we need a lot of research to say whether or not we want to investigate if this is a good use in our town. I think we should just start having...
I think we should investigate whether it's a good use or not. I do think that personally, I mean, why it's here as a staff mayor council discussion is because if we wanted to take the one recommendation from the planning commission to put it on the ballot, we needed to do that now. This is not an action we have to take now, but I think that we do need to look at the other things that it does. Many of the people who do the shared rentals rent the whole home, and that home goes off the rental market because it's a short-term rental, and it's for tourists, and it's a different use than having rentals for our home. So I think that there's a lot of sides to the story, and I think that we should look at them, and we should have staff see what our options are, but I don't think that I wouldn't want to come out and say, oh yes, I want to come up with a new regulation to have them or not have them, or how we're going to do it.
Well, maybe in the end we decide that we don't want to do it. Yeah, so, but you don't get there unless you have the discussion. And so, I mean, all those things that you're talking about in regards to, well, yes, you could take some properties off the long-term rental market. I agree. But if you're a property owner, I think you have some rights, and you should be able to have that option. But that isn't. But there's also folks like Jamie who are living in their house, and now that's providing some income for her, and that is now making her unit, her house, an affordable place for her to live, right? So that, in a sense, that is putting a unit on the in the affordable housing market inventory. So,
yeah, and just to add to what Cliff said, I agree with what Cliff's saying. I think we received a letter saying that there was someone who didn't want to rent full time, but wanted it when she didn't have family coming into town, and so by allowing this use doesn't mean that we're taking it out of the rental market. That homeowner still has the choice. There's no requirement that they have to do short-term rentals. They can still do long-term. It just gives them an option. So, I think I agree with Cliff that we need to consider what this would look like, a regulation, and as part of that process, we delve deeper into, community outreach to find out whether people think this is something that's appropriate for our community. We've heard views on both sides, and I hear the concerns, but I don't think we can necessarily just write off, we don't want people coming in and not, taking away from our small town feel. I've never used Airbnb, but I have friends who do rent out their homes, and from what I hear from them is that it actually encourages more community because they get to have conversations over breakfast or dinner, and it's more of a personal relationship and communication that you have with that person that's staying with you for a day or two than someone who's just staying in a hotel. It's like a B&B. So
I agree. I think that I have stayed in short-term rentals when I've been on vacation also. It's always been a whole home. I have never done it where I'm couch surfing. And it's nice staying in a neighborhood. I agree. But I think there's a lot of things that we're going to need to look at as far as the underground economy that needs to be looked at and how it can be regulated. And I think that's going to need more discussion and a longer time
If I could, Madam Mayor, because Cliff, you make a good argument, Cliff, certainly. And, I hear what you're saying. But I know Terry put it on the agenda just to deal with the vote part, and I think that we already...
Yeah, I wish there wasn't an
let's
agenda.
Let's not put it on the ballot, but I think the appropriate thing to do is bring it back on the agenda.
Absolutely.
And then allow staff to gather some data and then have a discussion. And
Yes.
then
Yeah,
go from there.
I think we're arguing about things that we
Yeah.
don't.
Right.
No.
We don't need the ballot measure,
So,
but what
yeah.
are the other options?
So I think we addressed the ballot measure, and then, so we will come back and re-agendize it, allow staff to get...
Just a point of order, or a question from staff is, when it would get agendized in the future, what additional information would you be looking for at this particular juncture versus something that might, regulatorily be handled in a, through a code amendment? So I'll be glad to do whatever research if you want to give us some guidance as to what you're interested in to take it to that next step or consider it.
Yeah, I would like the data on where, some folks like Jamie in the letter, like Bend, Oregon, why is it successful there or considered to be, and maybe get a hold of somebody there and say, how's this working in your community? A smaller community that's out of state of California, but, it seems that maybe...
Well, they're a big tourist area.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of sunbirds, and, they've got, anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, San Francisco is a big tourist area, and we're kind of part of that.
Right.
But,
And they're having big city issues with it.
yeah, I know, and they're a big city.
So as far as staff resources, we'd like to schedule some time to do that with the staff and to get a little bit more information on this report, or would you rather each of us sort of try to...
Well, if I could, Madam Mayor, because I think this is kind of an economic development issue in a sense, right? And that maybe our subcommittee can kind of handle that and then come back with some...
I mean, we could. Personally, for me, I'm fine with moving forward, putting it on our agenda, and then saying yes. Let's look at creating the proper regulation mechanism.
Yeah.
So are you asking for attorney time?
And then having it? No, not at all. And then just giving guidance to staff to have it go before the Planning Commission and have the regular Planning Commission process where you have public input, during their meetings, and then they make a recommendation to us and then we discuss it and take public input too.
Well, if it goes before the Planning Commission, I would like to see some additional community forum, sort of like with the Southeast Crocker precise plan. What we're looking at is, using our city website and like we did with economic development to have, some information posted by staff, some questions to generate a discussion, to have that online discussion, and I think that'll help inform the Planning Commission as well, not in addition to just a survey.
Well, I think we have to ask ourselves, well, what's the concern, right? If someone rents out their place, why is that so bad? I mean, I'm as a short-term thing. I mean, I'm struggling to find a negative thing to it that you wouldn't find if someone rented out their house on a long-term basis, right? So if any of you guys can provide some of those reasons, then okay, then let's look at it in a much deeper detail. But to me, I really don't see that much of a difference between long-term and short-term. So let's see if we can come up with a mechanism that provides the proper regulation so that we can receive the TOT and and we provide some clarity for these property owners. I mean, right now we're just kind of leaving them in the lurch, and that's not a good thing.
I don't have my arms around it to make a decision one way or the other, Cliff. I mean,
I'm not
I-
saying we're making
yeah.
a decision. It's just.
Well, I'm just
let's-
saying that's what I'm
Please.
asking is to get more data on how's it made successful. You know, what's the city's involvement in it? What's the regulatory stuff? You know, how much enforcement do they have to do? You know, do we have to hire a staff person to do? You know, it's those kind of details type of thing that bring back and have a discussion in council, then give the direction to the planning commission. At that
Okay,
point.
so
So,
you're saying put it on the agenda,
Yeah.
and then
And
we'll
let's
have a
iron
discussion.
some of this
Yeah.
out, because there are pros and cons, and if you read through a lot of it, there's a lot of pros and cons to it. And I think we need to discuss that. The staff has already given planning as much information as they could. We're going to probably need city attorney time. We're going to need things to decide how we can enforce this, how we can, whatever regulation, whether it's to do it or not to do it, how can we enforce it? And it's a giant underground economy that isn't necessarily, I'm not just saying the house rentals, that is not paying their fair share. They aren't paying into the economy in a lot of ways, and that's something that we need to look at. So
So does that become clear as mud now, John?
I think that's helpful. So we'll do the Bend, Oregon. We'll work with the city attorney on some of the enforcement questions, whether we have regulations or not, and how that, at least in a general way, those are the two areas. We can certainly repost something on the virtual city hall, or again to try to stimulate some more feedback or more focused feedback, or whatever you're hoping to get out of that. And if anyone has any other sort of data set collection or some sort of area of particular concern or interest that we didn't already kind of go through, I'd be glad to know that and try to respond in advance. So I'd be glad to take that kind of input as well.
thank you. So then there's the countywide assignments and subcommittee reports.
Yeah.
I know it's been fairly quiet for most of us.
I have none.
I attended the airport land use committee, and it was interesting. We were talking about the San Carlos airport land use, and one of our esteemed members said that airplane noise, he doesn't understand why people complain about it, and that his garage door makes more noise and is more annoying, and was sort of wasn't talking about our complaints, but about complaints from the San Carlos and the southern part. And I had to speak up for us and say it can be really annoying, because it can be very, very annoying. So there wasn't too much else there. I'm not even sure we had a quorum at that meeting, but that's it for me.
No, I didn't. I was on vacation, so.
And then written communication.
I had some.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So on June 25th, I was at the Community Choice Aggregate or Energy meeting for the county. We came up with a name based on a vote of what the CCE will be named. It's going to be Peninsula Clean Energy. And we had a presentation on energy regulation in California. Terry and I met on the Planning Issues Subcommittee in the beginning of July. We talked about the ordinance for dealing with garage setbacks and parking requirements, and those issues will come before the council. We met just yesterday on economic development. We had representatives from Prologis come in to talk about what they were planning on doing with the former VWR site and the environmental issues there.
I'm sorry, what's the name of the company?
Prologis.
Logis?
Prologis.
Yes.
They brought quite a large group. They were serious about, showing their interest in the property, but they did talk about the significant environmental issues that they're facing with the regulatory agencies.
And did they speak about how those issues will impact their possible development?
Well, so basically, they're not planning on doing any redevelopment of the site, because if they knock it down and rebuild it, then it would trigger new responsibilities for the environmental cleanup. So they're trying to, have
Repurpose.
right to use it as in its current conditions with some minor renovations.
Yeah, they're not trying to
For the short term.
skirt not cleaning up the site, but by not redeveloping the site, then VWR is on the hook for the cleanup.
They should be
And
on.
so, absolutely. And so they're doing it that way, but that would be a long process.
Long term. Yeah, did you tell them to invite Fisher Scientific up?
We talked about it, but it'd be pretty tough to land a sales tax revenue generator like VWR at the site. But we did talk about that.
Yeah, so they said the uses that they're considering would, there couldn't be any of the sensitive uses, like they couldn't have food manufacturing or biotech. It would have to be similar to some of the previous uses.
Warehousing
Fisher
and trucking.
Scientific.
Yeah.
One of those. Yeah.
Until the site was clean.
And then we talked about the draft RFP for the specific plan that will be undergoing for the Southeast Crocker area, and we came up with a name for that, a potential name for the specific plan. Park site at Brisbane Village. Brings together the park-like feel and the Brisbane Village with the existing name of the shopping center, and so that doesn't have to be the name of the development, but that would be the name of the specific plan document. And that document will come before the council in September. And then I also met about a week ago with some representatives from Breathe, California, to talk about having a smoke-free multi-unit housing ordinance. As you may recall, we had a resident come in, I think it was like a month or two ago, and talk about some concerns that she had at the apartments on Joy Avenue.
Condominiums.
Right, the condominiums there, they're mostly rental units. And so I put this organization in touch with our deputy city attorney, who is going to be, I think, meeting. They're going to be meeting to see if the organization can help us with doing some of the research to defray, which would help defray some of the legal costs. And then the issues before the Health and Safety Subcommittee will be coming before the council on August 20th at our next meeting.
The city attorney staff time did not reach our threshold?
No, there's no city attorney present at that meeting.
Okay, but the setting her up with meeting with Breathe?
I think that they plan to meet next week, but I doubt that it will be over the 5-hour threshold.
I discussed it with Ms. Stricker, and that meeting will probably last an hour or so, but the idea that then we would bring the various issues that have been sort of pending before the Health and Safety Committee to the council on August 20th, with laying out various options in terms of the issues, and the council can make a decision whether it wants to pursue any or all of those, and we'll have an estimate in terms of the amount of time it would take to sort of bring those to fruition, so that we can sort of keep in compliance with what the council wants to do on those type of issues.
Thank you. Clark?
I don't know anything.
Okay.
I've been on vacation. Just kidding.
Always good. So we did have some written communications about the Airbnb comments, and I think that's mostly what we've had. That's all I see. And then we have the League of California City voting delegates that we need to act upon. And I believe I will be attending the league.
So it's usually, traditionally, it's been the mayor pro tem?
Yes.
Unless you're not going to be there otherwise. And if not, I think then you look at who the...
So, and who would want to be, are you attending the league business meeting? Lori?
I haven't made plans yet. I put it on my calendar as a tentative date. I know it's in San Jose, so it would be easy to get to the meetings just during the day.
I will be attending.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we have one person who, do you want it to be
Any of us
me,
can
you, me?
You're going to go, right?
Yeah.
You're the voting
Yeah,
delegate.
so-
We need an alternate.
We have two alternates.
You're the delegate. Then
Okay.
Mayor pro tem would be the alternate, and then either Lori or I. And
Well, which one do you want it to be?
Lori.
Well, I thought you're going. And Lori said she's not sure.
No, I said I can be available to go.
Yeah.
I have to register. So we need two alternates.
Yes.
That's fine. So I'll be an alternate with Cliff.
So alternate. Okay. You got that. And do we need to vote on that? Is that acceptable to everybody?
Okay.
Yeah.
And you'll
Okay.
go ahead and register then for those. Yes.
I'll get back to you tomorrow on whether it's the entire conference or not.
Or maybe you can let me know what the options are. I didn't know you could attend for it.
Okay. And that brings us to oral communications number 2. And I have one hand for someone who's like to speak. I'm not seeing anybody else raising their hands. So come on up. Speak here.
I related to your comment about putting your shoes on in the morning.
I just ask for a few things every day. Can I stand up? Can I put on my own shoes? And the 4 of them all alive? And can I feed them that day? And that's important to me. I wanted 2 things. One thing, that I really appreciate your looking at this carefully. It is a matter of sustainability for people in our community. And I have seen many people die in my 26 years here who had a home and could have done something to support themselves. This would have been something, the darndest thing about it is that even I understand it. It's not something I have to deal with an attorney. I'm not going to have to take somebody to court. I'm not going to have to go down that route. It's a real well-developed system. Some people will thwart it and some people will screw it up.
I'm assuming you're talking about the home sharing.
Yes, it is home sharing, yes. But here's what I really wanted to talk about, is that citizen complaints, which I think is really important because you deal with them all the time. Back some years ago, when Lori was ill with she was on chemotherapy, and we had a neighbor that didn't like the fact that a tree on our property dropped leaves on their property. It was a deciduous tree, and it happened every fall, and there wasn't a darn thing I could do about it. And any part of the tree that went over that fence, they cut it off with a chainsaw. It was okay. There wasn't anything we could do about it. But, in fact, leaves still blew, and it was upsetting. Not to me, but nothing I could do about it, and I wasn't going to cut down a really good tree. So suddenly, I started having the police department at my house because my dogs were barking, and they weren't barking any more than anybody else's dogs. And I was asked to please keep my dogs in the house. And I said, I will if everybody else in Brisbane has to keep their dogs in the house. And they said, well, then just stop them from barking. I said, no, that's their job. But if they have to stop barking, I want every other dog in Brisbane to stop barking. They said, well, you know that if we get a complaint, we have to come and check the complaint. I said, every time? And they said, every time. I said, okay. You got a family? Yes. You have my permission to set up your family in my property. You can use the bathroom. I'll give you electricity, and you can come and live here because you're going to be here a lot. Because every time a dog barks in Brisbane, I will call you and say, will you please investigate that dog that's barking in Brisbane? And the officer was very nice to me, and he said, let's face it, somebody's mad at you. And I said, I know that. And so they're picking this point to come after me. Now, you see me around town. Most of the time, those dogs are with me. I don't go very far without them. And when I did have to leave them home, I had 2 neighbors that took turns watching them and calling me immediately if anything happened. And I was usually not very far from home, and I would come home if they were barking. But it became such an issue of somebody being mad at me for one thing or wanting to make a point and then getting almost to the point of it was vicious. And so I called and said, there's a dog barking in Brisbane. Could you please stop? Well, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, I know, but I have a sick partner in the house, and she needs to sleep. They had to investigate it. 10 o'clock at night, dog barking, I'd call them up. Well, I know, but I'm trying to sleep, and I'm on a very, very serious schedule right now, so we had to be, please investigate it. And so we came to an agreement that, these kinds of complaints were really superfluous, and they were harmful. And I think some of the things that I am concerned about with short-term rentals, or if that's what you want to call them, is that kind of a thing. I see it on Facebook sometimes. People get really into attacking someone, and they're just throwing everything with the kitchen sink at them for nothing whatsoever. And when I get on there and say, I think I'm going to have my hair done tomorrow, and everybody, let's talk about that. And it seems like it just you need to drive it another way. And we get this anger that builds, and it goes nowhere, and it provides no service to the community. I'm concerned about that. I think that can be harmful to the community. What I would like to offer, and somebody maybe more skilled than I can do a presentation of what that dashboard looks like for this Airbnb system. Because when you see how it operates, you kind of get a feeling of how the thing really works. And normally what we see of it is somebody goes and stays in somebody's house, and they like it or they don't, and so forth and so on. But we don't see the nitty-gritty of how it's all taken care of and how those that get TOT funds are getting that money funneled back through a system that is, pretty stable. And so I'm worried about the barking dogs and having someone knock at the door. How many units do we have in town that people are desperately having to rent out, not because they want to. None of us want somebody else in our house. I don't want somebody else in my house usually, but a lot of people are doing it out of desperation, and the economy is terrible for some people. Not just as a whole. We can say, well, we watch the stock market, we watch the economy, and so forth. But the bottom line is, for some people, it's terrible, and you don't know when it's going to be you. I met a woman up at the madhouse one day, and we were talking, and I said to her, well, you're going to be 70 someday, too. And she went, as if she'd been shot. It had never dawned on her that she was going to become 70, and she would have to deal with things. And suddenly it was as if the heavens opened up, and she saw reality about what her life was going to be. It is tough.
That's if you're lucky.
Yes. That's if you're, and I said it to her, you do want to be 70. I lost my partner at 45. You do want to be 70. And you should want to be 80. But we need to have, that movie, what is it, No Town for Old Men? We can't have a town that is elitist, that, you get to a certain point in your life and, you can't live here anymore. Sorry. I think that we're more humane than that. I think that we have a way to be more encompassing and caring and efficient and financially stable if we work a system out together. And that's the kind of thing that I'm really hoping that we do wisely. And I saw that tonight in you. I saw that, there was a real attempt that we will do this, in a good way and think about it. But I know there will be barking dogs. And and there probably won't be much behind it. But thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on our final oral communications? I'm seeing
Motion to
no
adjourn.
members. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.